Hello, I am back. I decided to do a quick follow-up um, to the last video. And that's because leaving these flat was just leaving me a bit flat. A little bit bored with uh, these two-dimensional objects. So I'm going to demonstrate this again in oil pastels, which is super easy to do this stuff. You can accidentally create some really great effects with oil pastels. Um, but it's the same theory as if you're doing it with pencil or with paints. So basically, I want to pop this out and not have it be as flat. So I'm going to round out this bottom. Now, if we were to sort of see through, we'd have an oval, right, for that bottom. And actually, we kind of can see through and, oh, not in this jar. This is the paint jar. So I'm just going to smudge out those other lines there. And we have the start of a three-dimensional object here. It's already looking a little bit better, isn't it? And I can use my, I'm going to call my finger a brush. I can sort of use my brush strokes, my finger strokes here to make a little bit of a more rounded shape just by doing these, not just horizontal, but sort of dipping down. And I'll demonstrate with just um, the black pastel. And as a matter of fact, light and shadow have a lot to do with seeing things in three dimensions. So getting ahead of myself, let me finish rounding these lines out. So in doing this, I just want to get rid of that flat line, that straight line, because that straight line was actually the line we're bending right now. We're just bending that straight line out into the third dimension here. Depending on where this is in your vision, whether you're above it or below it, or if it's at eye level, that will change how these lines uh, will be, whether they're going to be curving under or curving over. But we don't need to get into all of that right now. But in my vision, where this sits, this is just curving over just a little bit while the other lines are curving under. All right, so the next thing to do is shade and highlight. We want to get some dark values in here. So value is the relative darkness or lightness of a color. Black being the darkest value we can have. Ah, see how that's, oh yeah, that's looking better. That's looking better. And if this gray weren't here, I might just even leave that white the way it is, but I don't quite want it like that. So I'm going to add some white down here and some gray up here. And just play with that for a bit. Now, if I were painting, I'd have more options. But since I can't erase this oil pastel, I sort of have to work with what I've got, which is one of the cool things about oil pastels. Put a little more shadow here. As we're imagining the light coming from this side. Smudge it in a little bit. I might leave some of it a little rough. And add a little bit of a lighter value here. You see how that even gives it more of a mood? It's got a whole vibe happening. Oh, yeah. And then, of course, if I wanted to, I can go and get some other stuff happening around it. And if you happen to paint an object or draw an object in the middle of a page and it's looking kind of drab and you're not sure what's missing, I say take some paint and paint around it or color in around it or something, because sometimes that makes things look more interesting. So there's that. Same for this coffee mate container. Actually, I'm just getting these extra lines that weren't even there. Lines from the label, which I don't necessarily want. Just looking at the shape, not at the extra stuff happening. So same actually in this one, since this lid is so big, I can see more of it. So here's what's happening in real life. See the top of the lid. So the curves are happening both ways. We have the curve going up in the back and down in the front. Now this shading and highlighting is very dramatic. Looking at my objects here in real life, I don't have quite that dramatic lighting, but it's really for effect, and it does really add to it. It's far more interesting with these big value differences between the light and the dark than in real life. So we'll get some vertical marks just to get some in. Then I'll do some horizontal and curved marks to sort of help let us know that it's a curved object. Now, if I were using paints for this, I would be going back and forth between the black and the white paint or whatever colors I was using so that one would blend into the other. Instead of just doing black and hoping it just blends into the white page or the white canvas, it doesn't quite work that way. It kind of does with oil pastels a little bit because I got this grainy look, but with paints it doesn't work as much. You need to have something to blend into. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. One, it's how you learn. And two, you just don't set something down and render it perfectly. Not usually, anyway. Most people don't. It's back and forth, back and forth. And that's why we do art. We like to figure these things out. Otherwise, I could just take a photograph of my coffee mate container, you know. But no, I like the back and forth. Get a little lighter value right on this ridge because the light is actually shining on it, and it sort of differentiates between the lid and the bottom of the container. Mm, smudgy deliciousness. I love it. Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Um, and sometimes, again, you have to work on whatever's on the outside of what you're painting on to give the object itself a little bit more mm, presence, more um, to make it make more sense, to make it a little more interesting. Context matters. Where is this thing sitting? Is it just sitting in this really cool, painterly, messy setting, or is it someplace more obvious? So if you wanted to, you could even give it a table to sit on. And of course, shadows. That's a whole different topic, though. Shadows would make sense in this situation. I don't want to get too far into that. Now, pears, kind of a whole different ball game. My pears here, that one's starting to look like a gourd. And sometimes pears might turn into gourds in your paintings. That's okay. Or you just work with it and form it into what you want. But pears are really interesting things to paint because they've got bumps and there's a lot of opportunities for light and shadow, different values. That's a whole class in itself. So I won't go into that at the moment. But very briefly, I wanted to shade it just a little bit without worrying about all those dimples. I could do that, just a quick little sketch. So keep what you like, erase what you don't like, what doesn't work, paint over it, paint around it. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Just practice, 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 and you will get better. Art is like anything else, it's a skill. The more you do it, the better you will get. But you have to keep going, and you can't be afraid to make mistakes, and you can't be afraid to look bad. Everyone's got to start somewhere, and sometimes you will start and you'll have a great start and you'll think, wow, I'm really good at this. And the next time you pick up the brush or the pastel or whatever, you're like, oh, it's crap. Because that's the way it works. It's it's a strange thing, but that is the way it works. And it's kind of a good thing when you have that beginner's luck because it gives you encouragement to try again. Sometimes we start something and we're terrible at it and we give it up immediately. So don't worry if it doesn't look bad, if it doesn't look good. Bad art happens, and you've certainly seen me work my way through this, you know? It's okay. It's all a process, and we love the process. I love the process anyway. It's all about the process, not about the final project. All right. Have fun. Let me know if you have questions and enjoy. Feel free to post um, your practice work even and paint through it underneath this video. I would love to see what you are up to and help you get there. So paintthroughit.com. All right. I'll see you soon. Bye.